WNST. For the Chalice and the Goblet, we'll be dragging that thing up and down the strip and bringing it back. Of course, the Capitals in Game 5 on Thursday night, but there is golf to be had around here. And strangely enough, my pal Robert Canady from Compass Point Golf, who obviously does our college basketball and local stuff around here, as well as our golf insider down there in Pasadena. Robert was actually in Canada on Monday night, in Toronto, a city that I love, and making his inaugural debut there, as they would say, and watching hockey amongst Canadians on Monday night as a golf guy. What were you doing up in Canada having fun up there?
Well, it was tied into golf. I went up for a little golf article and a piece that I'm doing for a website, so there was a little bit of golf research and golf being played, and it happened to coincide with the Caps game Monday night, so I took the opportunity. I didn't want to be holed up in a hotel watching it by myself. What's the fun of that? So I found a big sports bar and went out and said, let me get among the Canadian hockey fans, people who really know hockey, and kind of see what it's like to watch a game with them. And it was a really good time, especially with them having no rooting interest in it per se, since the Leafs have been out long ago, as they'll begrudgingly tell you. But it was really interesting that to watch the flow of it. The vast majority, were definitely pulling for the Capitals.
Wow! Wow!
Yeah, and the few that I spoke to, the sentiment was, one, Vegas hasn't paid their dues.
That would be a very Canadian sentiment, by the way.
Yes, especially from the Toronto fans. That it just wouldn't be right for them to come in and win it the first year. And then there was definitely a lot of sentiment for Ovechkin to win a cup. I mean, there's a lot of respect for him, which I wasn't sure if there would be or not. Not being a true hockey guy, I wasn't sure how he was viewed around the outside the country, especially.
Doug McLean told me that the temperature there has completely changed on him, and that's part of the Canadian, Russian, Eastern, Western thing that they've always had, that you can't be better than Gretzky, you can't be better than our guys, but that is softened because of the way he's done this, the way he's shown up and gone to work and lunch pailed it and has gone into the corner and lays out on shots and stuff, and I don't think anybody can not respect his game at this point, right?
No, absolutely, and you're right. That was the knock, just from following them locally here that I'd heard, and from some of the national people in past years. But whether it was the discussion that's been often talked about that Trotz had with them in the off season, but he's really shown up, this postseason, running into the corners and crashing the boards and just playing. When the rest of the team sees that, they obviously expect it. I respect it, and the fans that I was watching it with did too. I mean, there was definitely a Capitals bias and cheering last night, Monday night, with the game. The 3 goals in the first period, the place went crazy and everything. So yeah, very good.
He is our golf insider, talking a little hockey because he was in Canada watching the Caps with real Canadians. I had a bunch of real Canadians too because the media is about 94% made up of Canadian people. We'll have a few of them on before Thursday night when we get to Game 5. On to the Lynx here, and I know the one thing the Capitals aren't doing right now that they're usually doing is playing golf, right?
That's the Penguins are doing that now, as we often talk about.
Oh,
right?
As are the Lightning, as are all the favorites out there, and the Nashville Predators, amongst others. The U.S. Open, everything just points toward it, right?
Right. We have one more regular season tournament this weekend to get through, and there's a couple big names playing in it. I think we've talked about the past leading up to the Masters. Players have different approaches to majors. Some want to take the week off and prepare at home on their own, and some actually want to play and kind of get the game in shape under tournament conditions. So both Phil Mickelson and Dustin Johnson are playing in the Memphis event this week. And, so there are a couple of big names there. And defending champion Brooks Koepka, who won the U.S. Open last year, is playing as well. But for the most part, everyone is, gearing up for next week in Shinnecock Hills. It'll be the first time it's been there since 2004. So, everyone's anxious about it. It's, one of the most storied golf clubs in the country, and doesn't get to host it very often. And most of these players, didn't play it the previous time. I think there's only a handful that were around, that had eligible at that point that will be eligible this time. One of those is Adam Scott, who had to go through backyard qualifying to get in. Believe it or not, he had fallen out of the top 50 in the world, which was an automatic qualification into it, and so he had to go to one of these what they call sectional qualifiers, where he was playing alongside a bunch of amateurs fighting for a couple spots in there as well, and some other journeyman tour pros that were there. So that's a unique way to get in, but that's truly what makes it an open. Anyone with a handicap of around 1 can sign up, and if you play well enough, you're going to be teaming it up against the PGA pros.
By the way, I had no idea how far out Shinnecock was on Long Island. Like, I'm looking out there. It's like, Sag Harbor, Montauk at the end. I mean, it's in literally one road on the way out to the middle of nowhere during a time when that area of the world's kind of full of people, right?
Yeah, it really is. I found that out a couple of years ago because there's several renowned courses on Long Island. Bethpage Black being one of the most famous because they've had the U.S. Open there before, and that's very accessible by the train and everything from New York City, and you can get there without much difficulty. But you get to there, then you're still a couple hours away from Shinnecock, I believe, at the best. So it is at the very, very end tip of it, which makes it all the more remote and all the more exclusive. So it's definitely something that we haven't seen on tour, and even in the majors, you've never seen on tour, but we haven't seen it as a major since, like I said, 2004.
It's 70 miles east of where the Islanders used to play. To give you some example, the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which most people in Manhattan felt like it was a long way out to get there. It's, that far out. I had no idea where it was. I kind of thought it was sort of upstate toward like White Plains or something. I didn't realize it was on Long Island.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't either until a couple of years ago. Just didn't realize it was out there. But yeah, even at that 70 miles, probably makes it a couple of hours. And that's one thing circling back to Toronto. I found out about Toronto has very New York-like travel. I had never been there, and for one of my appointments, it was a 4 or 5, about a 9-mile ride, or I have no idea kilometers. I'm still trying to figure out kilometers, the miles, and Canadian dollars, U.S. dollars, but it should have been a 10-minute ride that was about a 40-minute drive. So they have that in common with our big cities here in the U.S. as well.
Welcome to the Super City. Here's Robert Canady. They do Buckets and Birds out on Twitter, and they certainly do plenty of birdies, and you can buy a bucket of balls and stroke them along down at Compass Point. 36 holes of magic down there in Pasadena, as you're finding out this weekend. You also have your night golf coming up next week. I want to give you a chance to promote that because I know that's a big night for you guys down at Compass Point.
Yeah, it is. Next Friday, the 15th, it's coming up, so sign-up is available on our website at compasspointgolf.com, and you can sign up as an individual, you can sign up as a foursome, and it's 18 holes. A lot of times we do the night golf only 9 holes at dark, but this is actually, you get to play 9 holes, in the daylight, come in, get some eat and drink, then go out and play. So it's a real golf as far as 18 holes, a full round, and it's probably our most popular event of the year. Because of the timing of it, it's finally warmed up. We hopefully have gotten rid of all this, cold and rain that we had the last month or so.
And thunderstorms, don't forget them either. They're not good.
Right. And so summer is beckoning, so it should be very nice for it.
All right, U.S. Open and qualifying and the sort of the path to get there. I saw the Adam Scott thing. Run me through that again, in regard to the golf side of this and guys out battling over the weekend to try to qualify for the tournament.
Yeah, so there's, about 11 different ways or so, and, give or take a few ways that you can qualify to be in a major. All the majors have kind of similar but different. They all have a different 1 or 2 tweaks to get in, and most times it's based upon your world ranking, which a lot of times it's the top 50. A lot of times they go by the current money list for that year. Sometimes they use the FedEx point list. If you've won a major in the last 5 years, you're usually exempt into like every major for the next 5 years. If you've done well, and the U.S. Open carries a 10-year exemption. So if you've won the U.S. Open, you're exempt for the next 10 years. And, that carries, quite a bit of perk there. So if you haven't qualified through any of those ways, then you're not in. And the way to get in is send your application in to the USGA along with about 70,000 other people, and they began back in late April and May playing local qualifiers where 150 players would show up at places like Woodmont or Woodmore. They had a couple in the area, Blue Mash up in Silver Spring area of Maryland, and you'd go out there and they'd take the 2 or 3 best finishers there, and then they moved to sectional qualifying. Now, sectional qualifying is where those players like Adam Scott and the other tour players who weren't eligible, Billy Hurley, a guy from Annapolis, they automatically got passed into, they got exempt into sectional, so they didn't have to go play, the local ones. But so each sectional takes a different amount of players that'll be the final qualification for the U.S. Open, depending upon the strength of the field. Like the one Adam Scott was played in Memphis, where there's already a strong tour field there. So they took like 15 guys, and there were a couple other tour players and minor league players that made it out of that, and only a couple amateurs. You take a place like Woodmore, where there wasn't really any tour action going on this year. They only took 2 people out of their qualifiers. So those are you play well in your sectional qualifier, and you be one of the top 2 or 14 of your location, and then you get your golden ticket to Shinnecock Hills in 2 weeks. So that's the way it's done. It's truly unique among all the majors. It's you'll see in the next 2 weeks, you'll see a lot of stories come out if you're following it. The insurance broker from Manhattan who was a very good player in college, who got in, or a guy in his 50s who took up the game again after playing competitive golf. So there's all sorts of neat stories. There'll be some heartfelt tug stories, and there'll be some hard luck stories. So that's one of the neat thing about it. There's truly, if you were to go through that range in the U.S. Open in 2 weeks at Shinnecock, you'd see the Tiger Woods and the Dustin Johnsons, all those, and then you'd see everyone else. So it's really cool.
Robert Canady is Buckets and Birds on Twitter. He's also down at Compass Point Golf doing things down there. 36 holes. You can go down and play golf anytime. You can learn more out at compasspointgolf.com, out on the web as well. And U.S. Open next week. I will be at Shinnecock, or getting ready for Shinnecock next week. But hopefully I'll be drinking out of the Stanley Cup between now and then, dude. So, your golf course sits in sort of that interesting spot between Baltimore and Washington where kind of Caps fans are omnipresent on your course, right?
Oh yeah, and definitely a lot of Capital fans here, including our boss, the general manager. And he's been a Capital fan. You met him and talked to him, and he's been a Capital fan from way back, so he was able to relate to a lot of names that And the one thing I don't think we pointed out to you when you were here is that we had a little mini Ovechkin jersey and a stick signed by I think Peter Bondra hanging in the pro shop. So that's how big a Caps we are here. We got a little Caps paraphernalia that's been around here for years. So,
I think a lot of sports bars are going to be adding Caps paraphernalia that never had hockey before. I'm not hallucinating, but I've never seen anything like this. A bandwagon of this kind, right? I mean, in Baltimore, you can be a Ravens fan without being called a bandwagoner, but if you've never, ever put hockey on your timeline and you're now watching, you are on the bandwagon. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like you. I'm not a golf guy. You know that. I don't play, but you would not discourge me from coming down there and hitting a bucket of balls and saying, you're not a golf guy. We don't want you, right? I mean, right. From a hockey standpoint, you would say, the more the merrier. And the part that I'm loving, even you're not like the biggest hockey guy. You're watching it and saying, hey, this is pretty good. I love sports. I love basketball. I love golf. If I love those things, what's not to love about this tournament?
Yeah, and I said this, you're right. I'm definitely watching more of it this year than I have in the past, but I've watched it in the past, and I've said all along, I'm amazed by their athleticism. And this is coming from a guy who probably couldn't skate 2 feet, so that probably has something to do with it, but just the speed and the grace that they move and handling I think it's one of the most skilled sports that there is out there. So it's just incredible to watch. And you're right with this, the bandwagoners or the support that is region wide. I heard a little bit on the radio this week. Rob Carlin. I'm sure I think you know him well. And
very well.
He was talking about what they saw in Vegas when he was out there. He's like, oh no, what's it going to be like when we come back to DC? Are we going to look pale? And he said he was just blown away by the scene down there outside the Capitol Center.
Well, my son was there Monday night and just said it was one of the great nights of his young life. And my wife went down there Saturday night all alone, and she was kind of fretting. And, do I want to sit outside and, watch the game with strangers and what? She said it was the greatest night ever. I mean, the guys were offering her beer, and she saw kids and dogs and people and families and was high-fiving strangers. She had a great time, and it was free. You know what I mean? It wasn't $800 to get in like the tickets or whatever. So my family has enjoyed the hell out of this. Now, my wife and I are going to get on the plane. We're going to fly out to Vegas and cross our fingers. I don't want to be back down in the rink on Sunday, Robert. I mean, that's a slippery slope when you get to Game 6 and, it's 2-2 in the third period. I don't need all that, man. I've been down that river. Let's just put the cup in a box and bring it home, man.
Heck with winning it at home. Just win it, right?
Win it, man. Yeah. Believe me, you don't want this thing lingering longer, really.
No, absolutely.
All right, man. We'll hit it straight out there. I will join you next week for all things Shinnecock. Hopefully, I'll be Oh, I've been saying this a lot on the internet. I'll be wiping the nectar of the Stanley Cup gods off of my fingers and my lips. How about that?
Sounds good. Look forward to talking about that and the U.S. Open, hopefully.
Robert Canady is buckets and birds. He's also down at Compass Point Golf in Pasadena, where they have 36 holes and a great driving range, and it's really easy to get to, just 10 minutes south of the Baltimore Beltway. Very easy to find them down at Pasadena. You can find them at compasspointgolf.com. Also, the night golf coming up next weekend and the U.S. Open as well. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper delivers directly to your email inbox every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. It's always $10 a month, always judgment-free. They got the Lunk alarm out. You can always get some inspiration at planetoftriumphs.com as well. Morning newspaper also features the Laurel entries. They're back at Laurel after a couple weeks at it. Hi-ho, Pimlico. I just like singing that. Laurel this weekend, and also on the front of WNST's website, the Laurel entries. Now a permanent sponsor. We are appreciative of everything with the Maryland Jockey Club doing for us here at WNST.net. Also on Thursday before the game, I will be with Dennis Colazzos on the air at 4:15 from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Also be on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNS TV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.